Hey guys, Solomonster here with a sound off extra for Wrestle Kingdom 20, the end of one era and the start of another for New Japan Pro Wrestling, with the retirement of Hiroshi Tanahashi, but also the crowning of a new IWGP World Heavyweight Champion in Yota Tsuji, and the debut of Aaron Wolf. And if you are New Japan, you have to be ecstatic right now, because as debuts go, I don't think that one could have gone any better than it did. They announced the attendance as 46,913, which is the first pro wrestling sellout at the Tokyo Dome in decades, since Antonio Inoki's retirement in 1998. And you could thank Tanahashi for the house, because without that final match, they don't get anywhere close to that for this card. You know, on paper, it was a weaker Tokyo Dome card than most, but the key matches all delivered. And I really just wanted to see four matches. The women's match, which was a double title match, the Wolf debut, the double title match with Takeshita and Tsuji, and the main event. So I can't comment on anything else because I haven't watched it yet. The main event was everything that is great about pro wrestling. You know, you have two old rivals clashing for one final battle, one of the greatest in-ring rivalries in wrestling history. You will be hard-pressed to find two men that have had as many big matches as these two have had that were of the quality that they had. The other two that come to mind would be Okada and Kenny Omega. So Okada was the perfect opponent to give Tanahashi the best possible match. And Tanahashi, you know, he more than held up his end, even with the bad knees. They had a great match. It was a great story, great drama, with 50,000 people invested in everything that they did. And yet Tanahashi giving it everything he had until the final Rainmaker put him down for good. And then an hour-long retirement ceremony. An hour this went. That is legitimately the greatest wrestling retirement ceremony that I have ever seen. Right down to the parade float that they had Tanahashi on going around the Tokyo Dome so he could say goodbye to every fan in every section of the building. They didn't want to see him leave. So, you know, he went down in defeat, but they gave the fans something to really be happy with. There at the very end, it was perfect. And we were never getting both AEW stars losing back-to-back matches. So, like, once Takeshita lost, you know, in the co-main, if you didn't already know, you knew how the main event was going to go. But they had a double title match with Shuri defending the IWGP Women's Championship against Saya Kamitani, defending her New Japan Strong Women's title. Double title match. Kamitani won the Most Valuable Player Award from Tokyo Sports last month, which is basically their Wrestler of the Year award. That's the first time a woman ever won that award. And Tanahashi actually came in second in the voting. I just haven't seen enough of her work to form an opinion. Shuri I've seen. They got a little more time than the women did last year. It was the longest women's match they've done on one of these Dome shows so far. But still not long enough. You know what it felt like? It felt like they were condensing a 20-minute match into 12. But you could tell that Shuri was trained by Tajiri with all those buzzsaw kicks. She was paying homage. Really good stuff from these two. Shuri, she looked like a killer out there with some of those strikes. I was expecting Kamitani to win, you know, especially with all the fanfare around her. So when Shuri won, I was surprised. But they made the most of the time they were given. I thought this was very good. And then there's Aaron Wolf. And this was his in-ring wrestling debut. And he went one-on-one with Evil for the never open weight title. So I know that Wolf is an Olympic gold medalist in judo. And he's a big celebrity in Japan. Had a lot to do with TV Asahi airing the show this year on TV. Albeit on tape delay. It was because of this man making his debut. But he was up against Evil, who apparently helped train him. So there was probably no better person for him to be in the ring with for his first match than his trainer. But it's Evil. So you know what you're going to get. You're going to get all the House of Torture shenanigans. That coupled with this guy's, it being his first match, I had no real expectations for this. But New Japan needed this to be a home run for Aaron Wolf. Because if he has a good showing, you make a new star in one night, right? At a time when they need new stars. If not, he may go down as one of the biggest flops. So he comes out and he takes off his gi, and he reveals nothing but black boots and black trunks and a shaved head. And no, there was no goatee and no beer drinking. But he had kind of like shoulder length long hair. He cut all of his hair off. Like, I took one look at him and I thought, this man does not look like a star, which I guess was the point. He was going with the young boy look. But you don't look at the guy and immediately think star. He also looked very nervous, which is understandable considering it's his first match and he's out there in front of 50,000 people. But it was very noticeable, especially once he hit the ring and he was waiting for Evil to come out. He just looked like a ball of nerves. The good news is the fans were into this all the way through, and he never did anything to embarrass himself. In fact, by the end of it, it felt like a star was born. And for all the House of Torture interference that we got, this is one of those times where I think it really worked. And it's a good thing they did it. He got to take out the entire House of Torture with judo throws, and the fans were going nuts for it. He got splashed at one point by Bad Luck Fale, no less, who is gigantic. He got splashed through a table in the ring, but it's a Japanese table. So every bump through it looks twice as devastating as those Slim Jim tables that you see in WWE. But he puts Evil out in a triangle to win the Never title his very first night in. The place went nuts, and they did it. They hit a home run with this. He looked gassed when it was over. And again, part of that may have been nerves. And there was one point he had to be coached by someone at ringside to pose for photos for the photographers. So, it'll take time for him to get used to everything. He's a work in progress. But as first matches go, this was really good. Now, he's not going to be in there with Evil every time. You won't always have the bells and whistles and the silliness around him to hide whatever weaknesses he may have. He doesn't seem terribly charismatic. Maybe he is in real life, but that didn't translate to me, watching him here. But, if he continues to improve, he could be a really big deal for New Japan moving forward, especially with all the mainstream exposure that he gives them. But speaking of Evil, there is a report out from Fightful that says that he is looking at options outside the company. Oh, God. Please no. Please no. Is he still engaged to Io Sky? See, I may be behind on my wrestling couples knowledge. Maybe they're not anymore, but I thought they were. There was a video. I want to say it might have been from last year's WrestleMania, maybe the year before, but I'm pretty sure it was last year, where Io met Stone Cold Steve Austin backstage. And in the background, you can see someone who definitely looks like Evil. So that's what made me think, I wonder if they're still an item. Konosuke Takeshita against Yota Tsuji. Double title match. They had 2 double title matches on this show. It was for Tsuji's Global Championship and Takeshita's IWGP title. On any other night, if the show would have ended with this, I don't think anybody would have complained. This was excellent. As is everything that Takeshita is involved with. He's just on another level when it comes to big matches like this. And yet he can still find time to go back to DDT and do the silly shit that he did the night before this. Never forget where you came from. He gave Tsuji a brain buster at one point, and Tsuji sold his neck for the rest of the match like it was broken. And when Takeshita hit the Raging Fire later, which is his finish, Tsuji didn't kick out of it. He barely got his foot on the bottom rope to save the match, which I liked. And Takeshita hit an Avalanche Blue Thunder Bomb at one point off the top, which was the highlight for me. As spots go. But it still wasn't enough. And Takeshita kept throwing everything at this guy, but he kept fighting back until finally they hit separate corners, and they're staring each other down like a duel. And Tsuji won that battle. Takeshita went for the knee strike. This was after he pulled the knee pad down, but Tsuji caught him with the Gene Blaster first, and then put him in a Boston Crab, and he really wrenched back on it. And finally, Takeshita tapped out. Awesome stuff. What wasn't so awesome was the post-match, where Tsuji was attacked by Jake Lee, who I know made his return on the undercard earlier. Again, I have to go back and watch the undercard stuff, but this should have been saved for New Year Dash or something. This did not need to happen here. He jumped Tsuji during his promo after his big title win, and he left him laying, and he, basically teasing that he would be the first challenger for the belt. For what I've seen of him, he's pretty boring, and nobody really reacted to any of this. So again, this did not need to happen here. Now, if Takeshita was full-time with New Japan, he would be a great guy to build around, but he's not. In fact, he's got 3 contracts. Yota Tsuji had to be that guy. It was imperative to get the belt on him here, and they did. Now, is he going to draw like Tanahashi? Is he going to draw like Okada and the big names of the past? I don't know. I mean, you don't know until you try. They better hope he can draw, because those guys are gone now, and they need people like Tsuji to step up and take the mantle. You know, the old guard is either aged out or they all left for AEW. But the best part about him winning is that coming into the show, he said that if he won, this is why I was rooting for him, he would bring back the old V4 version of the IWGP belt, which was the best looking belt in all of wrestling. It never should have been retired to begin with. That, and he said he would merge the lineage of the current belt with the previous one, because they started a whole new lineage with this belt when they debuted it. I don't know if they're going to merge the lineages or not, but at New Year Dash, I saw that he did indeed bring back the V4 belt. So the AEW World Championship now slides back down as only the second most beautiful belt in all of wrestling, because V4 is back. And I hope it's not just for as long as he's the champion. You know, and then when he loses it, they revert back to the other one. If that's the case, then I hope he reigns forever. And then we had the main event. One last time, Wrestle Kingdom 9, Wrestle Kingdom 10, and now Wrestle Kingdom 20. Hiroshi Tanahashi against Kazuchika Okada. Okada said coming into this that he would be using his AEW entrance music, and it would be the AEW Okada. Not the New Japan Okada, not the Rainmaker Okada from the past. This was going to be the new Okada. And it was actually genius, given how they did the finish. It had to be this way. He was doing everything in his power to be booed by this crowd, which, to be fair, wasn't going to be very hard. Shout out to Walker Stewart and Chris Charlton on commentary. I thought they did a great job, even pointing out how all 3 of Okada's singles losses in 2025 happened within the last 6 weeks of the year. All coming in the Continental Classic. So just to give at least the impression that maybe Tanahashi had a shot here. Like he's vulnerable or something. Maybe he can pull off the win. And it was a classic Okada match where it starts very slow and it builds slowly. But it builds in this case to the big dramatic finale. And the key was Okada doing the lazy falling elbow off the top and then giving the middle finger Rainmaker pose like he does in AEW. But then as the match went on, Tanahashi, he was showing that fighting spirit, right? And Okada was trying everything, but it just wasn't working. And Tanahashi, he just would not die. He would not go quietly into that night. And Tanahashi, for his part, he did all of his signature stuff. He didn't look bad doing it. Obviously he's a lot slower now with the knees, but I thought he did fine. We even got a high fly flow all the way off the top to the floor. Okada hit a Rainmaker. Tanahashi kicked out. Then the Boston Crab, which submitted to Takeshita in the previous match, but Tanahashi wasn't quitting in his retirement match. So there was another Rainmaker later by Okada, but again, Tanahashi kicked out. And you got Red Shoes, the referee. He was great here. He's covering his eyes before he counted. Like, he wasn't shy about who he was rooting for here in this match. And this is where Okada realized he had to bring out the Rainmaker. The man who beat Tanahashi 10 years earlier in that very same Tokyo Dome. This is why the lazy elbow and the Rainmaker flip-off were so important early in the match, because it set up the slam, and then Okada heads up to the top for the leaping elbow drop. This is the best-looking elbow I've seen him drop off the top since he joined AEW. And of course, this match was not in AEW. He was back at the Tokyo Dome. But he got some height on that. He dropped it. See, this is how you can tell when Okada is really motivated and he sees it as a big match. It's based on whether or not he gets any height on the elbow. Does he just lazily fall off the top, or does he actually dive up into the air? That's what he did here. And then came the old school Rainmaker pose. And the pop that this got was tremendous. And then came one final Rainmaker, and that spells the end of the career of Hiroshi Tanahashi. And I went back and I watched the last few minutes of this with the Japanese commentary. And I do have to say, it was actually a lot better. Not that the English commentary was bad, but it was just so much more dramatic with the Japanese commentary. I also felt like the crowd sounded louder, oddly enough. But I love the story they told where Okada had to dig back into the old Okada to finally put this man down. And Tanahashi fought back until the bitter end. You know, we also got some callbacks from Tanahashi to Shibata's PK, Shinsuke Nakamura's Bomaye. This is up there with the best retirement matches that I've ever seen, including Sting at Revolution and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 26, which had a great story to go with it. That's why that one is held in such high regard, and so is Sting's, obviously. You know what? I would put Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior on there from WrestleMania 7 if Savage didn't come back before that year was even over. I mean, I'm glad he did. We got a lot more, good Randy Savage matches out of it, but that was billed as a retirement match. It was billed as a career-ending match. And I'm just thinking, like, man, if that really was the end of Savage's career, like if he stayed true to that stipulation between the match, which had to be the greatest match Warrior ever had in his life, and then the post-match stuff with him and Elizabeth, that would have been just peak, absolute peak. So I can't really include that, but I kind of wish I could. But this is right up there with the best of the best. And the tribute to Tanahashi after was fantastic, with all the different stars getting entrances and coming out while, Tanahashi cried in the ring, except for Naito. I love how even Tanahashi was pointing to his wrist like, okay, we don't have all night. Is he coming out here? He took like 5 business days to come out. But we had Switchblade Jay White, who we have not seen in a long time. He looked good. Hopefully we'll get him back on TV soon. He came out, and each wrestler that came into the ring, they handed flowers to them for them to give to Tanahashi. So they were literally giving the man his flowers. So we had Jay White out there, and then Will Ospreay, who's also recovering from an injury, Kenny Omega, and speaking of injuries, Kota Ibushi was with him. Fucking hell, Kota Ibushi. He refused to use crutches or any kind of support, and there's this long-ass ramp in the Tokyo Dome down to that ring. And he's walking down there. He's hobbling down there on a not yet healed broken femur that he just had surgery on, like maybe 2 months ago. He looked like he was in agony, limping down to that ring, but he was bound and determined to get down there on his own. Then we had Katsuyori Shibata. He came out, and he was already crying, but now he's just losing it because of the history and the relationship with him and Shibata. And Shibata gets in the ring. He takes his shirt off, and he and Tanahashi, they just get into a chop battle. I thought he was already unretiring, but then they embraced, and we got a rare show of emotion from Shibata. So that was great. And then Keiji Muto, he got into the ring. Tatsumi Fujinami. The two of them were actually seated at ringside, but they got up out of their chairs. They got into the ring. And finally, it was Tetsuya Naito, who did not leave New Japan last year on the best of terms. It was kind of weird, actually, the way he left. I just think they either couldn't or weren't willing to pay him what he wanted to be paid, and so he left. But he and Bushi, they just won the GHC tag team titles in Pro Wrestling Noah on New Year's Day. But he came out to basically troll Tanahashi one last time. He said some nice words, and then he spat on him one last time. Actually, he spat into the air, but Tanahashi acted like it landed on him, which it probably did. So, I mean, that's Naito for you. And, it's really shitty that Shinsuke Nakamura was not allowed to be there for this. Takeshita was wearing a red band tied around his arm, the same way that Nakamura has done before. He was wearing it during his match with Yota Tsuji. And after the show, Takeshita said that it was in tribute to Nakamura, who told him that, he couldn't be there, but he wanted Takeshita to represent him in spirit. So he did. So he clearly wanted to be there. There's no question about whether or not Nakamura wanted to be there. He just wasn't allowed to be there. And whether that was just WWE being shitty, or if it had more to do with New Japan's partnership with CMLL, and CMLL being in a never-ending war with AAA, which WWE happens to now own, I don't know. But, wrestling politics suck. Maybe that had something to do with it, but if WWE told him that it was okay to be there, I don't think not. I know Tanahashi is the president of New Japan, so he has to take all of this stuff into consideration. I don't think Tanahashi would have said no if Nakamura wanted to be there. Yeah, it's like Sting inducting Lex Luger into the WWE Hall of Fame, which Lex said he wanted. He wanted Sting to induct him, which of course he didn't. I don't know that Sting ever even asked Tony Khan if he could do it. The reports that were out at the time said he never even asked him. Or, him being with AEW, if WWE would have even allowed it anyway. Same thing with Adam Copeland, not being there for John Cena's retirement. I know the fans were asking for it. Fans on social media, they wouldn't shut up about Copeland. But did Copeland ever go to Tony Khan and ask if he could go? I have no idea. I know he's been away filming a movie. But I think there are times like this where that shit needs to be put aside. And knowing that Nakamura did want it and was told no at a time when he's not exactly doing a whole lot, I think that really sucks. But this was still the best wrestling retirement ceremony I've ever seen. Again, with all the cameos and the air guitaring in the ring, to Tanahashi being pushed around this giant parade float all around the Tokyo Dome to say one last goodbye to all the fans. He didn't want to leave. It was just a great moment. Even in defeat, they gave the fans something to remember forever. This Wrestle Kingdom was really all about one match, and that match delivered. So it gets a thumbs up from me.